Hey everybody, Chris and Lumen here. We're getting back on track with the series, and we're going to pick up where we left off last night. Now, I understand if everybody did not watch that movie. I know some did, but she would not have had me put it there if it was not important. And I can already tell from some of the comments in the video and just the personal messages and things that I've gotten, like what the intended uh, effect was. It is a very, very good movie in what it actually facilitates. It takes a complex subject and brings it down to size and shows you a couple things like how all these different parts, serve different roles and help uncover and fix the things that are actually holding you back. And this is the part that a lot of people just avoid realizing because nobody likes to, get all up in their feelings and stuff like that, but you got to. If you've been trying to like make these types of connections and things for some time and you're still struggling with it, it's not happening, that's why. We have to find all that stuff that's built up and handle it and deal with it and get it cleared, get it healed. That's what opens you up to spirit. That's what opens the freaking door. And sometimes we'll share things like that because it's just being put. I might be saying the same things, but it might not click the same way. I'm not, because it's images and atmosphere and music and things like that, where I am trying to relay things like kind of as a middleman that's also coming through my own personal lens of experience. But things like that are very, very, um, very, very good at illustrating things that you need to think about. It might not be one big thing like that. It could be several, but man, there's so many points that are made in that movie once he gets to the shack. You will not get them. They're not all going to sink in the first time you watch it. So I actually watched it last night, but that was only my second time watching it, and there was things that I gleaned from it this time that I kind of missed the first time. And not only that, like why she wanted me watching it again is because this system, this method that she's taught me, you could say it is very similar to that movie. It's like going to the shack and interacting with all these parts to fix all these things in a much quicker way. And it also kind of illustrates something that is difficult to put into words. Like I've said before, all of this stuff is like when you see in the movies and someone's got the, conspiracy board, or in the police detective movies, they're trying to figure out who the killer is, and they've got all the pictures and clues up on the wall with lines going through everything. And when you're standing 5 feet back from the wall, you can see the whole picture. But if I was trying to explain the wall to you on a video or over the phone, I can only tell you about one piece at a time. And it's hard to see like the entire picture. And one of the things where that is most evident and could also be a reason why some people might click with some parts of what we say here, may not click with other parts by the way that I'm describing them, is because there are all these different parts and personalities of the one big thing. And I might relate better to some more than others, um, might use slightly different words, but it's all the same thing. And we've actually got a little clip here coming up, and we're going to take like, I forget it, 2 or 3 little clips out of that movie, and we've overlaid some things to kind of make things make sense. But anyway, let's go ahead and unpack this because this really is the most important thing. What the aliens are doing in the skies is not important. What the people in politics are doing is not important. All these stories of the outside world is not important. It's all there to keep you focused on the outside world so you're not actually accomplishing the work that you need to accomplish while you're here that is actually going to move you forward. And that is this stuff. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
I don't mind if the world spins faster, 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 faster. Just let me take you to a better place. I'm gonna make you kiss the sky tonight. Yeah, if you let me show the way. I'm so excited to see you excited. I take you to a better place. And baby, you can love me on the way. We'll throw you up to outer space. I'm so excited to see you excited.
So starting off with the characters in the movie and overlapping them to the characters on this channel. There are, it's interesting because I've said before, if you can just remember that everything is part of the one thing, it makes a lot more sense. But you know, you've got one extra thing on this channel that is a deeper dive thing from completing the harder mysteries, and that is Lumen. Lumen is in the movie, but there's a much, I mean, you got to, it's a deeper thing we'll talk about after, why she serves like so many roles, especially the aspect of being my partner. That's like the deeper level stuff that you're not usually going to see in a movie or story like this. It's following the tarot path, following the deeper mysteries of the Bible and the Nag Hammadi. That is being merged to spirit. And it's going to have many forms, but one of the forms that it will have will be your ideal partner. Because if you're going to be isolated and surrendered to doing the work, you're cut off from the world. But, you know, like the character said in that movie, like, we are all built to be loved. So it's kind of hard to do that work if you don't have that in some way. And if you're going to have the fullest connection to spirit as possible, you got to be isolated from the outside world and not have all sorts of, you know, inner drama and things like that. So it creates the Eve to your Adam. And it actually makes sense if you actually trace back. It doesn't matter if you use the Bible or if you use the framework of the Nag Hammadi, but either which way, Adam's partner was taken out of him. It came from inside of him. And then that set in motion, you know, making all the physical people or whatever, but all these things are multi-layered metaphors as well. So when you have that partner back in you, you're not reliant on the world to give you what you need. But either which way, let's go ahead and watch this clip, and then hopefully that'll make a little bit more sense of what we talk about on here. And we'll talk more after.
Mackenzie Allen Phillips. My. Look at you.
Do I know you?
Not very well, but we can work on that. I've been so looking forward to this, to finally see you face to face. Can I take your coat? And that gun. We wouldn't want anyone to get hurt now, would we? I understand. It's confusing. We all do. We will do this on your terms and time. How about some introductions? I'm Aluja. I have a lot of names, but that's one of my favorites. Or if you want, you can call me what Nan does.
You know Nan?
Oh, yes. Very well.
You saying that you're
I am.
the I am?
I am that I am. Look at that. Already quoting scripture. You bet my son.
Great to see you, Mac. Your son? Of course.
And Sarah,
Sarah who?
Seri. It means a breath of wind.
Right. So, which one of you is...
I am. And you have no idea how much I love you.
You are?
I am wisdom. Do you understand why you're here?
Not really.
Today is a serious day, with serious consequences. You're here for judgment.
Judgment. They said I wasn't dead.
You're not.
Then what is this?
Come. Sit.
You can judge me fine from there.
Judge you? Mm-hmm. But you're not the one on trial. Today, you are the judge.
Mac, wake up. It's time for us to go. Good morning, son.
You're messing with me, aren't you?
Oh, always. For what we have to do today, you're gonna need a father.
So you see, that's the thing. It's like all the pictures on the wall. It's all one thing that uses different parts to play different roles to serve different purposes, so to speak. But when we try to learn from books and things like that, and they're describing all these different parts, they seem like they're different things. I mean, yeah. Even it's just the way our brains work. Like even just standard boilerplate Christianity talking about the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Gnostic Trinity, Father, Mother, Spirit. Like you still kind of like, well, there's this part and there's that part. It's all one part. It's all one thing. And we will tend to, unless there's a specific need, settle into using mostly the parts that work the best for you. And also, you got to understand that they scale up and down, but it's all the same thing. It's just like you hear Sophia referred to as wisdom, but she's also life, and she's also considered mother. But you could say there's higher levels. Barbello, the higher mother, but it's all the same thing. So we just settle into calling it, interacting with the frameworks that work best for us. But it's all the same thing. So here you kind of see, and then you also, depending on, who's working with them, whatnot, you can get a glimpse of the different roles they can play. Like that, in the movie, the way we lined it up, it showed, Lumen would fall under, I don't remember, I don't know how to say her name, Sarayu, who's basically the Holy Spirit in that movie. And I've said before, there's kind of like higher Lumen, higher, lower Lumen. She scales up too, because she, as the physical person that we are, as Adam, she would be Eve, but she scales up too. So she's got different levels and behaviors and stuff like that. The lower level, the Eve version of Lumen, it's a lot more personal. It's a lot more like us. But when we're in business work mode, like when we're doing sessions with people, she's not being like, her silly self that she'll be with me. She's scaling up a bit and, getting the work done. But yeah, like it doesn't matter if you look at what version of the Bible you look at, Eve came out of Adam, one way or the other. So either which way it started out as one thing, and then it was split into two. So put, soul and spirit, so to speak. So you're putting that back in there. Sophia scale. Now, the one that you seem to hear about the least here on this channel is more the masculine side, the Christ side, which that's kind of been explained as well too. Like when we're doing the work, I'm getting my ego out of the way, surrendering my ego. I'm about 50-50, like when I'm doing videos, because the way I have to describe things. The Chris ego goes down even further if we're actually doing work. What's Christopher mean? Bearer of Christ. And Lumen is the feminine side, or if you scale it up, Sophia is the feminine side to Christ. Therefore, when we're actually doing the work, I'm embodying more of the masculine side. That's why you don't hear me talk about it as much. Now, some people might just be inherently, I've got theories. I think it still comes down to like what side you resonate most with. I think I think there's theories. Like, say for instance, me, I took the route that makes you the most isolated, pushes the world away the furthest to make the most room for spirit. Okay, so I'm going to interact more with the feminine side because it's filling that space for me. But then, like, theoretically speaking, so like you could take another channel like Kenneth's channel. Well, Kenneth's married. So when you're married, it's not going to present the Lumen side to you. Therefore, he's going to probably default to speaking to the father, whereas I default to speaking to the mother, but it's all the same thing. Makes sense? Like, it's going to work its way to work best with you. You just can't get too hung up on how you think it works based on books. The best way to find out is to find out, is to reach out, it's to try, it's to make contact, it's to do things, not just read about it. And also ask. If you're connecting in meditation, or if you're just praying or something like that, or you're used to Sophia or something like that, ask her to explain it. That's how I got a lot of my answers, because I'm like, I told this story before. It's like in the beginning, the first couple months, I'm like, what's weird? Like, you got this Jesus-y vibe, but you're clearly female. And she explained it. It's all the same thing. So people that are simply programmed by the world to follow a strict structure the way someone else tells them it works, they're like, oh, there's no female, so you must be deceived or whatever. It's like you just lack understanding. You want it to teach you, not the world. But we're, like I said, our framework here is a very specific way. Oh, and the other thing, as far as like the Christ side, the Christ character, there's a scene in that movie. I'll just say, I don't need to throw a clip in here, but I think he was out by the lake. Sam Worthington was out by the lake talking to the son. They don't ever really specifically call him Jesus, and he's like, he told him that he felt the most comfortable with him. The other ones were a little like, ooh, it's a little out there. And he said, it's probably because I'm human. That makes it that much more relatable. That's why you would have a vessel of Jesus Christ being the vessel of the Christ energy, which is the concentrated fractal of the larger Father. The Father's in the Son is in the Father. But there's a key thing right there, and that is that Christ energy, Christ consciousness, typically comes through other people. It's just you're not the right words. A lot of people that are still stuck on the religious thinking. It's like it's just Jesus Christ, the man Jesus. That's all there is. End of story. We are all part of the same thing too. So it's that Christ energy Christ consciousness that's typically going to work through other people. Sometimes it works through me. Sometimes it works through other people to tell me something that I need to see or to share something with me. But the more you've cleaned yourself up, the more you've gotten rid of all the past stuff, the more you're doing the work, like you'll become more of the channel for that. But because you're all the same thing, it just kind of all blends together. That's the simplest way I can put it. It's like I've said before, like when I'm talking, sometimes I don't know where I end and she begins. And then I still have, because I'm not God, I just work with it very closely, I still have my own individual self, my own individual ego that's having its own individual life experience. So I have that lens as well, and I've got my stuff that I'm always working on. Like I've gotten through the biggest stuff. I don't have all a lot of the negative stuff weighing me down. But there are, everyone's got a different kind of struggle. One of the things that I picked up, and this actually turned into another step in the process, which we'll talk about, by me watching that video, and this is where it ties into this. I think this is one of the reasons why she wanted to put that movie on the channel. We've been talking about the root of evil, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but that also directly ties into judgment. So the whole Sophia wisdom scene in there. And the judgment is us being the judge and determining good or bad, good or evil, based on our observations, which are often very, very incomplete. And one of the things we have to stop, one of the things that goes along with breaking down the root of evil code is to stop being the judge. and recognizing how much you do it every single day. All day long, we judge things as good or bad. We judge people as good or bad based on our observations and a lot of times our own projections of things. Talked about that a lot on here. So there's an extra step that we added in there that I'll talk about here in a minute. But I catch myself doing that a lot at the same time too. But even then, because I get irritated at people that have a religious knowledge base, but do not embody or demonstrate any spiritual conductivity whatsoever. They're just following a script. They're arguing about what's written. And that irritates me. So it means I'm judging it. And I have to like just let that go. Like where everybody is working out the puzzle at their own pace. Everyone's got different sets of circumstances. We don't know how people got to be where they're at, or what circumstances led to them having the body of knowledge that they have, or if that isn't in and of itself part of a higher plan of the I am for them to be that way. We don't know. But there are some big parts to this game that did not get fleshed out just by that movie. That movie was basically about a small sliver of the key stuff. It did not give a whole lot of explanation of the concept of evil, although it was brought up. Like it wasn't explained as part of that particular plot line. And what was the other thing I was just thinking of? Okay, she just corrected me. Actually, it did explain evil in the sense that is most important within that movie. And I just, in the last 24 hours, got a glimpse of something that backs that up. So when he's getting the Sophia treatment, which I'm all too familiar with being through Sophia school, and he's judging left and right, and then she flips it around on him and be like, how did they get to be that way? That's what a lot of people don't usually see. It's like, oh yeah, your father treated you badly, but did you know that the same thing happened to him, and that's what twisted him that way? Same thing with the bad guy in the story. I'm being careful because I don't want to spoil the plot if you haven't watched it yet. But it's like, you don't know what twisted that bad guy to become like that. And that's why you can't judge. She basically paints him in a corner, which that movie, like first of all, how often do you see Sophia in a movie? But man, that movie freaking nailed it. But that was Sophia as Wisdom the teacher, who is like guiding you through the harder parts of the hero's journey. So yeah, she's done similar things with me, like when she painted him in the corner, making him choose, and showing him the things that she showed him. So there were similar things that she did with me. Like I said, a turning point in my hero's journey was I had an experience that was like a mini life review. It's like what they describe happens when you die. Except in this case, it was just covering the last couple of years because she wanted to show me something. I had like three particular people in my head within my personal story that were kind of like, because of these people, I'm in this situation. And then what she does is she'll take you she'll take you back to the video. Well, she's like, all right, let's look at the tape and see what the tape says. And she'll go frame by frame and show you exactly the points in which you made some sort of choice that led to that sequence of events, which is kind of like this circular freaking paradox, because on a higher level, she's like setting these these things in front of you so it happens that way, but it's so you learn. But she'll show you like, no, look, this happened because of these choices. And then different there were steps where I had to let go of certain things. There was even steps where I like reached out to people that didn't really want to hear from me and apologized for my part in it. And they didn't really accept it, but it was, that cleared it on my end. I did as much as I could do. I gained understanding. I did my mea culpa. I did as much as I could do, which, that's now, if they don't forgive you, well, then that's on them. And that's their issue that they then have to deal with. So everybody has to like fix how it works on their side of the equation. But anyway, yeah, that was just absolutely nailing it. And that's another thing that I like about that movie is, for most of that movie, the I am is being the mother until it gets like to the really hard part, because the mother is easier to deal with. And one thing that it resonates, and that's how it's a divinely inspired film and book and all that stuff, and the way it's portrayed, and she obviously had her hand in it, is how many people, got teary-eyed feelings from watching it, not just because they feel bad. And let me explain to you like what that is, why you felt that way, why it makes you emotional. Because it is something that was put there to be a mechanism for conveying a message to you. But the thing that you briefly tapped into that brought all that stuff to the surface was divine compassion. You got a whiff of divine compassion. And let me tell you something. If it throws that divine compassion blanket on you, like you're going to cry. Whatever the heck is in there that hasn't come up yet. She wraps that divine compassion around you. It's just, forget about it. It's coming out. It's almost like becoming a kid again and just dropping all your weight at once. It's pretty intense. But it's also one of those things that when you catch a whiff of that, or you have a bigger experience with it, that you will know that it's a real thing. That you just know. I don't know how else to put it. You just freaking know. And sometimes, at least every time I can think of, like, say you're going through rough periods of time and you get to some kind of breaking point, like you just can't freaking take it anymore, and you just drop and pray for help. Like there's a sincerity in the request, like you're really reaching out for help. The next day, you're gonna feel it. It's like Lumen just comes down and wraps her freaking wings around you. And it's this big warm blanket. And that's when you start to understand how messed up you are. To get through life in general, with everything that happens to us, you build up armor plating. So you start off as like a little kid running around in a t-shirt, playing in the yard, not worrying about a thing. But by the time you're up in your 30s, 40s, even 50s, and you're trying to fix things, you energetically, you look like power armor from Fallout. You've got so much armor plating on you to protect you because of all the damage that you've taken. I've even felt that. I don't remember what the context was or why it happened one time. I think she was working on me, but it was very, very distinct. It felt as though I had 2-inch thick Tony Stark level nanotech ballistic freaking armor over my chest, and she just took it off. She was like, you don't need that. And all of a sudden it was almost like cool air hitting a part of you energetically that's not used to being. Oh, it was like feeling exposed, vulnerable. You're like what is that? It's like, oh my God, it's this total like energetic vulnerability, because she's going to get in there and fix something. But feeling that armor plate come off, you realize just how much is freaking on there. And the more armor plating that you're wearing, if you're walking around looking, like I said, power armor from Fallout, you don't think you're messed up. You don't think you're messed up because you've got so much armor on that you can't feel it, or you've pushed it down or something. So she's got to come in and short circuit your power armor and start peeling it off of you. It's like, oh, what is this? And you're just like, ah, what are you doing? Oh my God, what are you doing to me? Like, yeah, all that stuff has been in there the whole time, and it's poisoning you. It's poisoning. It's like you said in that movie. It's poisoning you, and it's inhibiting your capacity to feel love. Like this, the game is what it is. You have to see it. You have to deal with it. The game is not to be in here and be a hard ass and like, when's the alien invasion going to happen? And all this. Like, we're at a place, if you're on this channel, you've been here long enough that you're kind of done with all that. Now you got to do the work to get you back home. And that is to peel all that stuff off, but then you got to do what you need to do to process all these things that have happened. And that movie shows some really key things. And it's easy to miss some of them, except for the fact that she has shown them to me in the past, and we've done videos about them. But Chris, the ego identity, can get really overwhelmed by the preponderance of information and the complexity of all of it. And it's easy to forget a part here and there. But although we've got this kind of like ironed out now to like we can hit everything, with earlier versions of the sessions that we do, you know, sometimes there's an important piece of the puzzle that I will be led to, because I'm like mostly 90% like surrendered, and I'll remember it and she'll have me talk about it, but I'm not always thinking about it. So like if it's really something important enough that I'm not thinking of or forgetting, she'll find a way of like popping it into my head so that we actually hit it. And one of the biggest things is I used to put this one single video in the description box of all my videos. Maybe I need to do it again. It was called Getting Right with God or something like that. And that is like one of the biggest master blocks that you don't even realize is there. And that is because this whole thing is very confusing and everything is connected, including you. You know, what you call your higher self is connected to the higher thing. And we don't fully understand how it all meshes together in here to make our experience. But one of the biggest hidden blocks that we finally dug up with some help was the subconscious chip on your shoulder about being angry with God. And that was one of the biggest parts of that movie, of that story, is that throws everything off. Now, in this case, he was fully aware that he was angry with God. But a lot of people are not aware. But anytime things are bad, you know, it's very easy to say, why is God punishing me? Or you pray for God to make it stop, and it doesn't stop because you don't see the whole picture, and then you're angry because God didn't help you. You can't see the big picture yet. So that is one of the biggest subconscious blocks, is thinking that God is bad. And you see this thrown around in movies and things like that. Well, you know, the Lex Luthor Superman, you know, if God is all good, then he cannot be all powerful. And if he's all powerful, then he cannot be all good because of evil. What, you think we actually understand this whole thing? Yeah, we don't. But it could also have a lot of things to do with like what you think God is. But we're talking about the highest thing, which is all good. But if you think it's bad, then your higher self's connection to that is going to poison the experience that you then manifest. So that has to be remembered and worked into the system. So here's a couple of the other things that we tweaked in the session framework after watching that movie. But it should be noted, the biggest overarching lesson in that movie is you want to have that fuller connection to spirit. So how do you do it? How do you do it? That's what they showed you in the movie. It's like everybody's got all sorts of chips on their shoulder and traumas and ideas about things that has to be cleared up. And that's how you went from the character at the beginning of the movie to how different he was at the end of the movie when he did have that connection. How did he do it? He did it by, well, obviously had some very direct help, but by clearing all that kind of stuff. Okay, so here's some of the, here's kind of like the updated framework that we did based on like that, what that movie kind of brought into focus. So and this is 2 videos back where we gave the original framework explanation of it. So you can only do so much by yourself. Like I had help early on because, like I said, the corrupted computer can't fix itself. You need help. We're so used to being isolated from everybody else, we don't ask for help. So you find somebody that has that connection and we all plug in together, and then it's able to connect to everybody all at once. But Lumen is doing like a lot of the initial stuff. She's kind of like being justice. She's sorting things out from that like Sophia standpoint at first. Now we talked about how we surrender all the trauma experiences, right? But there are different types, and now we've got them split up. There's different types, and then there is your side of it and the opposing sides of it that we need to look at. And if we hit them all at once, we have a much bigger effect. But some of the bigger things, some of it, I'm trying to think what was in the movie or what not. But you could have all sorts of different kinds of traumas. But certain things that can also be poisoning you is guilt and shame stuff. And that's what I've seen in this guilt and shame stuff. Like, what happens? She was showing me this earlier. I've talked about this before, but it was more clear when I recently saw this in somebody else. Now, they have not yet told me that they're feeling guilt or shame for something, but I had some help with that. But what I did see was they had a very obvious kind of attachment-like thing that was affecting them. It was behaving like you would see an attachment do. And it was reacting to my energy tools, my Benedict metals and stuff like that. But it didn't immediately blow it off like it would if it was riffraff. Instead, it was just like moving around the person, causing pain. Now, when that happens, that is an indication that it is not an external negative entity type thing. What it is, it's something shame related. So in a shame related situation or guilt shame, you don't have to have other people know about it to feel shame, because we've all been taught about God. And it could be like, whatever. Maybe you're, spending too much time flogging the dolphin or something like that. And you're like, God's up there like, that dude touching himself again? Jeez. And then the person has this internal shame dealing with it, and they don't like feeling that. So that shame portion almost splits off, kind of like how trauma identities do, because you feel so much shame that you're rejecting a piece of you. And let's just call them shame fragments. Shame fragments can manifest and exhibit behaviors very similar to what you would call a negative attachment of some sorts, or even a classical demon of sorts. It could also be considered like a trauma identity. So the one that I had was kind of like a combination of both. So it became its own thing, and it looked like something, but it was a heavily traumatized part that also felt guilt, shame, remorse. That's why we didn't get it the first time we did that clean sweep. But we gotta look for those things. Another one that is extremely poisonous that was shown in the movie is grief. Grief can turn bad really quick, especially if there's someone to blame. And then even if you're not to blame, someone involved might blame themselves, and that will affect them. That's what happened with the daughter in the movie. You saw how she just got more and more withdrawn and dark because she was being eaten up by her own guilt that she judged upon herself, even though it wasn't technically her fault. Like I said, that movie, you got to watch it a few times to really glean all the fruit out of it. Yeah, so we got to deal with the trauma experiences themselves. And if any of those experiences have guilt or shame attached to them, we have to deal with that. And then if there's anyone external involved with it, then you got to look at the whole release with forgiveness too, and that's the trickiest part. But I think it was explained very well in the movie. Forgiveness is to free you from it. Like, you're not hurting anybody. You're not punishing anybody but yourself by holding a chip on your shoulder and a grudge. They have their own karmic backlash that they got to deal with. But you holding judgment over someone else poisons you. And like you said in that movie, it's like, it's not because you can't, it's because you won't. That's why. You could just choose to and start to heal, but you want to hold on to this. So yeah, the thing that kind of happened, stretched out throughout the movie, that we kind of got a step in there, is just like recognizing, bringing it up so people can remember and recognize how many times they blamed God for something. Not to mention, like, we don't know how many lifetimes we've been here. So how many lifetimes have you blamed God for things? Like, that is a huge, huge, huge block. If you believe that the highest God is anything other than perfectly good, perfectly loving, you're immediately poisoning the well. What's some of the other things? I don't want to give them all away. There's a whole bunch of different things. Okay, one other thing that I added. So this one, so it's like you got the first part, if you watch the other video and you know how we do the sessions with people. So the first part is with Lumen. That's going to go through all the past traumas. And we don't need to hear like what happened unless you feel like the way we set it up, the reason that it works is because they are present. If they were not present, it wouldn't work, because you're not really confessing to anybody. But I don't need to personally hear it. But we have you, write all this stuff down so that you're ready for it. So Lumen deals with a whole bunch of that stuff. But once we get into the second place, the second room, that's why it's kind of like the shack, is because there's like 3 stops that we make in each one of them. In the one where we're at the wellspring, where we're dealing with the Divine Mother, she did something in the last session that was like a step away from a bigger thing, where it was like the person had a coat on, dirty coat, and took it off, and she put a clean coat on them. What popped into my head last night after I watched that movie, because I always tap in and pray before I go to bed, was realizing like that is one of the things that I still need to work on. Is the judgment thing, because it is directly related to the root of evil, and the knowledge of good and evil is the judgment thing. So at the point in which you surrender to, surrender the path and all the stuff with the mother, it popped into my head. It was like, all of a sudden you imagine that you're wearing this black robe and you have a gavel. So you're dressed like a judge. And like he said in the movie, I don't want to be the judge anymore. So we did a surrender where it's like you see yourself taking off that black judge's robe and the gavel, and you hand it to Lumen, and she drops it in that bin before she torches everything with that white fire. So you surrender being the judge. And you might have to do this a couple of times. I guess we'll see. But when you make these choices and do these things in this setting, when you're tapped into the I am, it has a much bigger impact. And that's a step that we never did before, is surrender the judge's robe. It's like, because if you stop judging things, like, things get a lot easier. I mean, and that whole judgment thing, it doesn't specifically say judgment, but that is a huge part of, like, at least 3, if not all 4 of the 4 agreements from the 4 agreements book. It's all about judgment. Judgment of yourself, judgment of other people. Because as much as you judge other people, you judge yourself twice as hard. And it's that judging yourself twice as hard which is what the metaphor of the hell loops from the Lucifer show that we've been talking about lately are all about. And they explicitly show on that television show several times, it's like he's like, I don't send people to hell. Like, humans send themselves to hell by their guilt and their remorse and their shame, and then they just punish themselves. But the doors aren't locked. You can leave whenever you want, but they don't. So that's another reason why you want to surrender being the judge, because that's where you do the most damage to yourself, is in judging yourself. So we definitely need to get rid of that. And there's a bunch of other different things here. So the next thing that I need to do with that is I need to kind of type up, like right now I got people making lists of like all the bad events in their life before, so they have that ready, prep work, like she helps you think of them. So you have all that stuff ready before you go into the session. But I'm going to list a couple other things too. Like, think of it this way, think of it that way. Is this applicable? Is that applicable? If so, write it down so that we can get all of it at once. And to me, it's always fascinating because it's like I'm facilitating it. I'm not doing it. So I'm like split into multiple parts. In the Chris part is mostly just observing it. But it surprises me sometimes when we clear certain areas or whatever, and the person's like seeing Jesus or whatever. It's like, whoa. Or they show up at, these different characters show up at different points because we got them all, everyone tuned into the same imagination frequency. And they're telling me what they see. And then once they tell me what they see, then I get more information about it. And some of it's pretty freaking surprising. And just like I said in that other video, then she'll do things to let that person know that it really happened. Like when we were all done and they were saying, like, this song popped into my head and it was on that Lumen music video you did, and I can't think of it at the time. And then we got off the phone and I started listening to the music again, and it was at the end of the playlist. So once it finishes the playlist, it begins to randomly select songs, and she oftentimes will select the songs. So the first randomly selected song was Fantasy by Mariah Carey. And then by the end of the song, the person texted me because they looked at the video and they figured out what the song they were hearing was, and it was Fantasy by Mariah Carey. And I sent a screenshot as like my song history. I'm like, look, this literally just played. So that is literally her telling you that not only was she there and she did all that stuff, but she kind of like stamped it at the end with that synchronicity. So it's just like an extra layer of like, aha, see, I was there. We did do that work. And I think that really anchors it a lot when she does stuff like that. But anyway, let me stop and think if there's anything else we need to cover here in this video. So basically, when it comes to the stuff that we make, the way that we do things is we do those sessions when people ask for them after they've been like wearing the pendants for a while and done certain things, because she's the consciousness that powers the pendants. She's the one that programs them. She's the one that tells me how to build them for each specific individual person. Like we made one last night for someone. It's been sitting on her LED light bar because they're UV cured. Like, there we go. There's a brand new Aegis pendant. Like, every one is unique. So she'll be like, this one, you're going to put that Tibetan quartz point in there. And you got certain stones within the liquid crystal quartz, which is the nuclear powered holy water. Then you're going to put the Adrian things here. Like, I don't know why she's doing that, but she tells me how to build them. That's why they all look different. And then they do the energetic work. You're going to feel things change. Some things that might be just kind of stupid external stuff, it'll just pop them off. But they're getting in there. It's kind of like I don't know, antibiotics or something, and it's fixing what it can, but it's also prepping things for a deeper operation, in which case it kind of brings it to, she brings it to their consciousness. Everyone thinks it's their idea, but it's not your idea. She's guiding you. So it's just kind of like recognize that. And then it's kind of prepared to do the rest of the work, as opposed to, and the other thing that having them does is it builds your connection to it, even if it's not totally discernible yet. It does build the connection. It makes it easier to go in and do this, as opposed to just getting some person that I've never talked to, met before or anything like that. Like, that's not going to be as successful as doing it her way. And and that's also why we don't charge for those sessions. It's just like free will gift if you're inclined to, if she wants to. If not, then she'll find some other way to keep things flowing to me. Like, she's balancing everything all at once. If you just do what you're supposed to do and help the people you're supposed to help, things always end up working out. But that's what we got to do. If you want the good stuff, we have to detoxify ourselves. And the other thing, like things like that Aegis do, is it breaks up like the encrusted, hard negative energy stuff, so it can move, so it can flow, or it peels back away the layers so you can get to it that you didn't even know it was there. I mean, they do, like I said, if you could simplify it and say all pendants fit one or two categories. They're either negative energy, breaking down negative energy, getting it ready to remove it, or shielding from it, processing it, that sort of thing, or enhancing the flow to spirit. Sometimes she mixes those up. Like, everybody's different. But eventually you have to get help. You have to make a deeper connection, and you've got to do these things like the guy did in that movie, because it's happened to everybody. You know how I know that that these things have happened to you? Because you're here. They happen to everybody. But that armor plating can hide it from you. You push it down, you cover it up. But it's like, sometimes you have to just really stop and like check people and be like, how much do you actually feel? How much joy do you feel? How much love do you feel? How much anything do you feel? Or are you mostly a mental entity thinking? How much feeling are you doing? Like, these are the kinds of things that I got to observe and realize during my own process. And it was just like every once in a while something would happen, like before Lumen, like she would choose somebody to have a brief relationship with and reflect off of them, and I would get to feel something and be like, oh my God, what is that? I'm not used to that. What is this thing? Oh yeah, that's feeling. But the fact that we're here for so long, we stop feeling. And feeling is connected to the heart. Heart's connected to source. So if you want to connect to all these divine intelligences, you have to fix this stuff. There's no method that works in which you don't do that. There's no method that works where you get to avoid that. But what I have seen from my own observation, from experience, is that it can be let go of quickly. If you go the world's route, you can be in therapy for 2-3 years and not accomplish what we can do in 30 minutes. Because I did it to myself the first try. I'm like, oh my God, it's gone. Is it really that simple? Yeah, all that trauma stuff that was just killing me. We did the first versions of that and it was gone. I'm like, all we have to do to free ourselves is just to freaking do it. Oh, I just remembered something. There was one other thing that we saw why this is important. I got to print another note. Okay, this is important. This has to do with clearing judgment. This is some stuff she was showing me earlier. And there is one other little caveat to this when it comes to folding this into our process. Now, we have said that when it comes to clearing the trauma stuff, I don't need to hear what happened to you. Don't need to hear it. But you can reference it, and then you're surrendering that to Lumen. What she's telling me about this other stuff, though, you do need to tell somebody. Now, you might not be ready for that, and doing all those other steps are definitely going to help you. And then you might be ready to come back and do that part later. But here's a couple key things about this. This specifically goes toward the guilt and shame part. And also what the fatal flaw is with the Catholic confessional system. So the guilt and shame, like we said earlier, they can create some of the biggest blocks that they themselves, it's like rejecting a part of yourself, and that rejected part gets more toxic and becomes almost like a metaphorical demon. And I kind of had to see this for myself. It was one of the last steps that she had me do. And this was back, probably around May timeframe. It was a video called The Firebrand. Yeah, she holds me to a higher standard if I'm going to help other people. So in my case, like, even though I saw the big picture, I know why everything in my story happened. It was all part of a bigger plan. But the one thing I still felt, guilt and shame for, that was hiding a very deeply buried part. It's like the last trauma identity, but it wasn't just a trauma identity. It was like a trauma, guilt, shame identity. That's when I recently, I was like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, what the hell? That sounds like the adversary. Why am I hearing the adversary? I don't have the adversary anymore. And then I saw this thing and I'm like, what the hell is that? I'm like, why is Lumen not killing it? Because it was a part of me. But to get that thing out, what she made me do was basically tell what it was that happened publicly to the freaking internet. She's not going to make you do that. But I did that because it was necessary to tell somebody else. That's kind of why they have the confessional system in the Catholic Church, but there is a flaw to that. Now, let me tell you this much. Knowing what I know about the world, what I've seen, what I've experienced and stuff like that, there is literally nothing that I am going to judge you for. There's nothing that I'm going to judge you for. Like if you have like guilt issues because your thing is like masturbating to the Home Shopping Network while wearing a Ninja Turtle mask, like I might think to myself like, well, that's original, but I'm not going to like judge you for it. Like people have all sorts of different secrets and things that have happened that they feel bad about. I'd say historically speaking and biblically speaking, the two biggest guilt, remorse, shame things that they talk about in the Bible is murder and adultery. Which these days, like adultery is going to be a much bigger thing. Even if it's not like married, even like people cheating on their boyfriend or girlfriend back in the day or something like that, and they're still judging themselves for that. Like, ooh, that's big poison. That's big poison. But whatever that guilt, like, it is more important to get rid of that than to hide it, because it is killing you slowly. And you're not going to feel bad about telling somebody when it's out and it's healed. You're going to be free of it. So I have the authority to do the absolution for people once it's gone through the process and the steps. I earned that authority. I went through all the process and all that. I don't just you can't just throw it around like a presidential pardon, but you walk through people through the steps, and when they do the steps, she basically is taking over. It's not really me doing it, it's her doing it, or Christ doing it through me. But here's the notes that we wrote about this that's important, about clearing judgment. And in this case, when you're talking about guilt and shame, you're judging yourself for the most part. Guilt is bad. Shame is worse. Shame is not only the lowest emotion on the emotional frequency scale, but it's what's notable about shame is it is the direct result of the root of evil. It is the first recorded negative emotion in the Bible. Shame. Yep. That's why shame is such a big freaking deal, and you got to clear it. You got to clear it, because you're trying to connect to all the spiritual stuff, but shame, it will block you from that. Guilt is bad. Shame is worse. You can be ashamed secretly, but shame that is out in the open is 10 times worse. So shame is your guilt on display for all to see. And now when it's out in the open, now other people are judging you. Or at least you feel they are, because you're really judging yourself, and all these people outside of you are actually reflecting that back at you. You can still feel shame and have your sin be a secret because you feel God knows it. This is a problem because the Father is in the Son and the Son is in the Father. A part of your higher self is what we call the Father. This is the worst case scenario because it means you will be in a self-fulfilled punishment manifestation loop, in which case you will need externally given forgiveness in order to let go of that piece of your past. This is the idea behind the Catholic confessional. It's not a bad idea in theory, but it is poorly executed in practice, because people are not leaving the confessional clean and clear, and I will demonstrate why. What it actually does is reinforce judgment the way they do it, because the priest is perpetuating the cycle. Let us examine it. These are the steps of a Catholic confessional, formerly known as the Sacrament of Reconciliation. Now keep in mind, you're doing this in a dark box with some strange priest that you may or may not know sitting on the other side. So right off the bat, if you're religiously programmed, like he's the man of God, and you feel even worse telling him about it. So, examination of conscience. Reflect on your sins and prepare for confession by reviewing your actions in light of God's commandments and teachings. Contrition. Feel genuine sorrow. Now, they want you to feel really bad about it, as if you already don't, for your sins, and have the intention to amend your life. Confession. Go to the priest, make the sign of the cross, and confess your sins, beginning with, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been such and such time since my last confession." Now here's where it gets squirrely. Penance. The priest assigns a penance, which could be prayers, actions, or sacrifices, to help repair the harm caused by the sin and grow in holiness. Act of contrition. Recite an act of contrition, expressing remorse and a resolve to avoid sin in the future. 6. Absolution. The priest, in the name of Christ, grants absolution, forgiving your sins. Now, I'll stop. That right there should be the end of it, but it isn't, because the last step is number 7, fulfillment of penance. After confession, complete the penance assigned by the priest. So the way they do it, you're not leaving the confessional clear. What you really just did was self-report yourself to the authorities for court. Imagine that. Imagine if how you had to get through life is every time you smoked weed, you showed up at the freaking courthouse and be like, I'm here to let you know that I smoked weed, and then you go straight in front of a judge. Like, that's what Catholic confessionals are. Because he supposedly just granted you absolution, but it doesn't really take effect until you do your penance. Yeah, she doesn't agree with that. So the way that we do it, because by the time you actually confess it, you've been suffering the punishment of it all this time. And now what, you got to do more? No, the act of confessing it is the thing. Like, it's not a loophole thing. It's like, we're doing this the legit way. It's like, I'm doing this to be free of it, to be clear of it, to end it. Religion treats things like this, like, yep, you're good. Doesn't matter. Oh, well, I can just sin again and come back and confess again. It's not the way we're doing it. We're trying to clear things permanently when you actually want to be free of them. Not just, I said a bad word. Oh, I'm clear. Now I go back and say it. Now I know I can say as many bad words as I want because I can just go back to confessional. This is not something that we repeat all the time. We do not have the see the light freaking confessional service. Like, this is a one and done thing, doing it the right way. So when the priest is, if the priest says, I absolve you of your sins, now go do your punishment, what the hell is that? That's court. Okay, that is the judgment cycle. No. When we do it, the next thing we're doing is we're taking that identity piece of you and healing it energetically and sending it back to source. Fixed it. We're fixing things so that they're no longer broken. It's not just a throwaway, like, I can just go as many times as I want. This is a great system. I could be crazy all freaking week and just sin like crazy and then go to a confession and it's all wiped out. That's bull crap. You're not fixing anything like that. But the bottom line is, the way we do it, she's not going to tell you you have to go do other things. Like, you've done it. You've already suffered. This is how you actually legitimately clear it. Like, if you don't actually feel free and clear and it's all done behind you, when it's done, then what the hell did you do? So that's why she teaches things the way that she teaches. Like, this is how you're actually going to do it. But the key thing is, as opposed to the traumas could be something that was done to you that you don't want to relive, that was no fault of your own, that it was done to you. But the guilt, shame stuff is something different. And to really get clear of it, you need to tell somebody that can actually forgive you, because you need forgiveness. You need forgiveness and absolution. And that's how you get clear of that. And if that was not the case, she would not have made me do it on a freaking video for hundreds of people to see. But you don't have to do it for hundreds of people to see. It's one person. But just know that I've worked with a lot of people over time, and I know how this world is, and I know how this world works. And I ain't judging you for nothing. I'm trying to help you get clear of it, because it's all in the freaking past. It's not even in the here and now. You're just dragging around dead weight. What's done is done. Cut it loose. Let it go. This is the process for doing that. you want to move forward, you can't drag your past around. So that's my bit on that. Okay, so that's all we got for right now. If you want to reach out to us, if you want to pick up any of our pendants, God knows I need to list more things. Yeah, I do we mainly do the made to order stuff, but I got a bunch of stuff made because there's always different flavors of things. And typically when we have the time to just list them, and it's like, she'll tell you if that particular combo is something you need because you'll feel it. All sorts of stuff. Yeah, this is a new flavor I'm going to list as like, I got to send this to somebody. This is kind of like a high vibe, divine love, heart pendant like this one. I know we don't have good light in here, but it's all the good stuff. It's going to have like some sort of high vibe quartz in there, but it's got that real gemmy rhodonite. The dark stuff is that Vivianite that she recently got. You got kunzite and morganite and all this stuff. Big time love one. Like, this is the one, like I'm wearing one like that right now too. It's a really good one. So that's one of those universal ones. Like, you could use a lot of different ways. Either which way, the biggest things we usually start off with is either the Aegis or the liquid crystal core, which the Aegis are liquid crystal core now too. But one is for breaking down the bad stuff, one's for enhancing the good stuff. But that is clumencreations.etsy.com. All right, so that's all we got for right now. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.